Hello folks, this is David Hurley of EasyChessTips.com, and today I want to talk about a game I played with my regular partner Dr. M on Wednesday 10th of October 2018, in which I was white and opened with my standard repertoire move d4. This game has a rather strange twist in the third move. I'll take you through. Dr. M replies with d5, which I was expecting. I reply with my standard c5, and again I was expecting e6, and e6 came. To be honest, I'd done a little bit of a prep for the semi-Slav, which is what I was expecting Dr. M to play tonight. So I reply in usual fashion, third move, knight to c3. And it's at this point where Dr. M chose what can only be described, I think, as a rather eccentric move. But you never know at our level whether it's eccentric or a stroke of genius. And it was knight to e7. Now, in post-game analysis back here at home, I've been searching for black playing 3 knight to e7. It's not mentioned in my Bible for the d4 opening, strategic chess opening repertoire for white by John Watson, not even mentioned. So I thought, well, it might be mentioned in an older book, Chess Openings by W.R. Hartston, which is so old that it uses the descriptive notation, which incidentally I rather like, but I stick nowadays with the modern algebraic notation. And I can't find any reference to that move here either. I've Googled it, and I just find references to the, as you can see up here, to the Queen's Gambit decline, Queen's Knight variation, but that merely refers to the White's Queen Knight. There's no mention of Black's Knight hopping over here. And when you look at this Knight here, he seems to have successfully accomplished two things to the advantage of White. He's blocked in his Queen and he's blocked in his Bishop. We can only suppose that this Knight is on a journey, either up to here, f5, or over to here, c6, and not simply going to statically sit there and defend Black's d5 pawn. However, of course, whenever this kind of thing happens, you're always faced with a dilemma of what do I do now? I decided to continue as if this knight were on his standard square, f6. And so I proceeded to take the d pawn, and Dr. M responded in like fashion. The advantage bar doesn't seem to move very much, so I suppose we haven't done anything too foolish at this stage. It does bounce about a bit later on, though. Here we go. I hop up to g5 with my bishop, pinning the knight, at least temporarily, to the queen. And this induces another rather strange move. I wasn't expecting it at all. The queen hops out to d7. So I suppose the benefit is that it's unpinned, and you have now this cannon aiming at h3. Whatever the merits of that are, I don't know at this stage. Yeah, I decided to develop. Then we had a third move, which, well, yes, it opens up. This g6 move here opens up. Sure, it opens up for a fianchetto, but the fianchetto never came, as it turned out. And indeed, I was looking at moving my bishop into here to attack the rook. The rook can simply move over to here, but it does disrupt things for Black somewhat. However, I held off from doing that, and instead I thought I'd just quietly develop with the good old e3 move here, releasing my bishop for future operations and creating a pawn chain here. Yeah, I was expecting this move to come in, but Dr. M strengthens his pawn chain, and my advantage is building up somewhat here as I keep developing. I put my bishop onto d3, and again another unexpected move. The knight hops out to the side. This square is the target square, not for the knight but for this pawn. So however, when it comes in, the advantage bar does a big leap. At the time when this came out, I assumed that the knight wanted to come down here, aiming for this square here, or perhaps aiming at the bishop. And so I thought I would deprive the knight of any forward squares and did the quiet little h3 move. And so here comes the c5 move, and there's a great leap. A massive advantage has suddenly appeared for white, according to the chess engine, following this move. These leaps up and down, it seems to be, in this game, it seems that whenever one of us does a move, the engine thinks it's a massive disadvantage to have moved like that and favors the other player. So we're looking at a possible central knight attack on the queen here. There's this weak pawn as well. But I didn't do that. Instead, I couldn't resist this pin. Now, the pin is all very well, but the knight can simply cut across and block the pin. So this knight does finally get moving. It may have been better. I haven't analysed this line at all, but let's just go back. It may have been better. What happens if we take the knight? So it's suggesting that the king moves forward and takes it. So the point is that I didn't bother to take the knight first because either the king or the queen will take the bishop most probably, and then there's no pin over here. So I declined to do that, and I moved my bishop out for this little pin, which kind of forces, well, it does force that move. What have we got? Let's get back to our regular game. Yeah, the knight comes over here. And at that point, indeed, I moved my knight forward. So you have this double attack on the knight plus an attack on the queen and eyeing the weak pawn over here. The chess engine is looking at this move. I think it briefly looks at e3 as well. Yes, it does. There we go. It looks at e3, and in the end, sorry, e6. It looks at e6 as well, and that is where Dr. M placed the queen. The engine has found a nice little knight sacrifice here. Let's have a quick look at this. I haven't analysed it at all. He's not recommending that the queen takes, because if the queen takes, what do we get? What do we get? The bishop comes in here to attack the queen, and we now have a double attack on this pawn here once the queen disappears. The queen can't take the bishop because the knight is protecting the bishop, and obviously the queen can't take the knight because the pawn is protecting the knight. So if we move the queen back to a random place, out of temporary danger at least, like here, then we get in this attack, and it looks like it's game over because the bishop here is blocking those escape squares. The knight is blocking this escape square, and the bishop has checkmated the king. So game over after 14 moves. Yeah, I didn't see that. But still, never mind. We proceeded in a rather slower fashion. So we had the bishop comes in here. I brought my rook across, looking at this line here. Obviously, I begin to dither about here. When I've got this advantage, I fritter away most of my advantage. So when I move my rook across, Dr. M brings his pawn down to prevent the threat of a rook, or to defend against any attempt of the rook to break through there. However, my advantage is restored by this move. I then decide to wriggle my knight around, looking again for an attack on the queen, and my advantage disappears down the drain, and is promptly restored by this attempt to fork my knight and my bishop over here on f6. This fork doesn't really have any teeth to it, because you can simply hop away as I did and take the bishop, so there's an immediate exchange. But even better is this knight can hop up here and attack the queen. However, as you saw, I took the bishop with my knight, beginning to work on this cannon over here, which is pointing straight at the king. The king then takes, which kind of strengthens my cannon over here. I'm not sure, until these moves, I'm not sure that this was a real threat. My bishop here is still under attack, but instead I now attack the queen, and the queen comes down here. And at this stage, I bring in my cannon. The pawn takes, and so we have a knight on pre suddenly, but also we have a bishop here on pre. So this little exchange goes ahead. My bishop takes the f6 pawn. The queen takes the f6 pawn. This pawn here now blocks the defense of the knight. I take the knight. Indeed, Dr. M moves his bishop in, and I do that. So get in a check. The king, if the king moves, the king cannot move here because he's being attacked by the knight. If the king moves onto the back row, this rook is toast. And so there's a better move, which Dr. M sees, and that is to defend by blocking with the bishop. I'll just go back one. So I was aware of this nice little move here, where the knight attacks the pawn, seeming to sacrifice itself while attacking the queen. But I delayed this move. So what happens is if the knight takes and the pawn takes, the queen can then take down here and check the king. But I delayed it. I thought I'd castle rather than leave my king out in the middle of nowhere, although right now there's not much coming in the way of attack. But I've been caught like that several times before. So I felt I had time to attend to a bit of king safety. Dr. M whips his rook over here, but it's a forlorn attack because I now bring in my knight to attack his queen. So if he takes my queen, I'll take his queen with a check, and then this pawn falls. So, not wanting me to take with tempo, he simply avoids the exchange, which now allows me to move towards an advantageous endgame. I take his bishop, he takes my queen, I take his queen, he takes my knight. So all looks fair and square, but I'm going to take his pawn, he takes my pawn. But now we have a nice advantageous endgame for white. There are 3 pawn islands that black has to try and protect. Black also has 4 pawns to my 6, so I have a 2 pawn advantage, crucial at this stage of the game, and a nice pawn chain with only 2 pawn islands. And so this game now plays itself out to, it took quite a few moves to get there, but to a victorious conclusion for white, as one would hope from this position. So I'm quite happy to swap pieces off. I've given away a pawn, so I now only have I've brought it down to, well, I still have a 2 pawn advantage, so we're doing okay. And I'm just going to keep advancing my pawns. So he's trying to blockade the pawn. It's a bit difficult with the rook, especially when another pawn can attack the rook. So he moves away, attacking my A pawn, but I can defend it with my rook. So the machine is recommending that the king moves back here, ready to defend against the advance of the pawns. But Dr. M moves down, perhaps are hoping to get rid of this pawn. I'm not quite sure, but it's a chance for me to head towards promotion up here. So he's attacking the rook. No need to move the rook away because this rook can't break in at this stage. It needs one extra turn. Bring up the king. You need your king. King is always an advantage. Moving forward as the endgame approaches, it is always advantageous to move your king forward. The rook moves back. Move my king forward. He moves his king back. Now I just start advancing pawns like crazy and looking to break in here. So it appears that he's got himself an extra pawn. I'm quite happy to go with that because it allows the breakthrough. This is the mistake that finally seals the game. I simply advance through, and now the king cannot come over here. These squares are blocked, so the king has to move away. The game concluded with I think it was a checkmate at the end. My notation ceases at this point as the time was running low on the clock for both of us. So the moves came flying in at this stage, and checkmate was delivered towards the end of the evening. Well, actually, that was the end of the evening. It was the end of the game, the end of the evening. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this game. I don't recommend black defending against the queen's opening in this way. Here it creates all sorts of problems for black on the organizational side of things. It creates an awful lot of problems for black, so best avoided. This is a better square here for that king's knight in this variation. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that game, and I'm going to keep plodding on, trying to improve my chess. Right now I'm reading, where is it? I'm reading the English translation, translated and edited by John Nunn of Mikhail Tal. Very entertaining book, and I've already got some ideas for showing you some stuff from this book. So that's coming up in upcoming videos from easychesstips.com and myself, David Hurley. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.